Hey guys, it's Kira and today I'm going to be sharing my Gilmore Girls Readathon or Gilmoreathon TBR, and I'm honestly so excited for this readathon. And this readathon has actually pulled me out of a readathon hiatus because after the summer where I kind of like burnt myself out and got super stressed trying to do loads of readathons and writing challenges, I kind of just said that I wasn't going to do any more readathons because they were just too stressful to try and balance alongside full-time work. But as I'm sure I've mentioned a million times before on this channel, I am a huge Gilmore Girls fan. It's basically up there along with Friends as my top show ever. I never get bored of it, and both of those shows are like the shows that I could watch non-stop, and I like my comfort TV. I just love them so much. And also something that I hadn't really realised until I started this booktube channel, but I've now had loads of comments telling me, is that people think that I look like Rory Gilmore, which is of course the biggest compliment ever. So basically as soon as this readathon was announced, I knew that I had to take part. So this readathon, if you haven't heard of it, is taking place on the 1st of October to the 15th, so it's a 2-week long readathon, and it's being run by Desi, Liv and Mackenzie, all of whom I will link down below because they all have such lovely channels and are amazing for creating this readathon. So without further ado, I'm going to talk you through the books I'm going to be reading for the readathon. Now actually, one of the things that I loved most about this readathon, aside from the fact obviously that it is Gilmore Girls themed, is the fact that there are 2 ways that you can participate, which is perfect for me. So the first one is the more like traditional readathon style where there are like 7 prompts, I believe, and you pick a book for each prompt. And then the other way you can participate, and the way that I'm going to be choosing to participate, is by reading books from the Rory Gilmore reading list, which is basically a list of all of the books that were ever mentioned in Gilmore Girls, and there are a lot. So I've picked a few books from that list just because I feel like that's a little bit easier for me, because it means I don't have to go out and find new books. I don't have to try and read 7 books in 2 weeks whilst also working, and also I can tick off some books that are already on my TBR rather than having to buy new ones, so it's a win-win for me. And so I've picked 4 books, which is a relatively low amount for what I'd usually try and do in a readathon, but I'm trying to keep this very chill and relaxed so that I can actually enjoy this lovely readathon, so I've just kept it small. And if I manage to finish them, which is doubtful, but if I do, I can always pick another one as well, but for now I'm just going to keep it to the 4 books and try and enjoy reading them. So the first book on this Gilmore Girls TBR is one that I was actually quite surprised to see on the Rory Gilmore reading list, because it wasn't like a super well-known classic or not one that I'd really heard of before, but that was the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient Indian scripture that has obviously been translated into English for this book. And I actually had this book on my TBR because I'm not sure I've mentioned on this channel yet, I've definitely talked about it on Twitter, but I've actually signed up to do yoga teacher training next year, and for that I've got a few books on a yoga reading list to try and read in prep. So a lot of them are quite like anatomy focused, but there are some about the philosophy, and this is one of them. So I thought that it was perfect because I could actually tick this off as well as taking part in the readathon, so that is perfect. And I'm actually really interested to read this because it's going to be interesting to find out a little bit more about the philosophy behind yoga, but just in general it's very different to anything that I'd usually pick up, so I'm really interested to see what it's all about. Next up is Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, which I just think has the most adorable cover. I absolutely love it, and that was actually one of the main reasons that we bought this version of Huckleberry Finn. Now Huckleberry Finn is obviously a book that I've been aware of forever because it's just so well known, but I'd never really fancied picking it up until recently. But then Jay actually read it over the summer and really enjoyed it, and of course with the fact that it's on this reading list as well, I thought it would be the perfect time to finally get around to it because it is so well known, and I just feel like it's one of them books that I just really want to read just to find out what it's about, because I feel like with a lot of classics, they're in all of our vernacular, we all know the names of them and the authors and everything, but I really don't know all that much about what happens in this story. But I do know that Jay really enjoyed it, which often means that it's going to be a good book because Jay has quite good taste, so I'm hoping that I'm going to enjoy this one. And although it is a classic, it's actually not too long, it's only just over 300 pages, and I think technically this is like a children's book. I'm not sure to what extent the content would be considered a children's book now, but I'm definitely excited to read it and hopefully enjoy it. So the next book on my TBR is actually probably my most anticipated read for this readathon, and that is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. So this book was one that Jay bought me for my birthday, and I've been really excited to read it ever since because it sounded so interesting, but I just haven't managed to fit it into my TBR at any point since then because I've just had so many other anticipated reads. And so I was really glad when I saw that this one was on the Rory Gilmore reading list, because I knew that it was just the perfect sign that now was the time to pick it up, and I'm just really looking forward to reading it. And also quite handily, it's a short read as well, which should mean that I'd be able to fit it in within this readathon, which is great because I'm going to need all the help I can get trying to read as well well as work. But this book, if you haven't heard of it, is basically about a woman that's kind of like forced to admit her sins by wearing a scarlet letter A to symbolise the fact that she's committed adultery and I believe had a child outside of wedlock. But for me, this sounds like a really, really interesting book because it's a historical fiction, obviously, and it is set in a like Puritan village in America in around like the 1600s, I think. And so that is a time that I haven't really read all that much about, because although I find history really interesting, I've never really read all that much historical fiction. And so I'm really looking forward to finding out a little bit more about this, because although I don't believe that this book delves into the theme of witches, I'm really, really interested to read more about the sort of time period surrounding like the Salem witch trials and all of that kind of thing. And I know Nathaniel Hawthorne has also written a book that's kind of about that subject matter, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading this and hopefully finding out a little bit more about that time period. So the fourth and final book that I'm going to be trying to read in this readathon is going to be Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood, which I'm really excited to finally read because I feel like this book has been on my radar for the longest time. I first heard of this book back in uni when I was writing my dissertation, because I was writing about The Handmaid's Tale, and so I was obviously reading quite a lot of essays and critical material about Margaret Atwood's works, and so a lot of them reference this book as well as The Handmaid's Tale, so it had kind of been on my radar, but I didn't actually pick it up until a couple of months ago, and then even then, although I'd bought it, I still didn't manage to find time to fit it into my schedule, kind of like The Scarlet Letter. It was up there, but kind of not as much of a priority as some of the other books I had, and so when I saw that it was on the reading list, I thought it was the perfect time to try and read it, and I'm definitely looking forward to it because I do find that Margaret Atwood has a really captivating writing style, and I'm really excited to read more of her stuff because kind of like embarrassingly, I feel like I've only ever read The Handmaid's Tale and now The Testament, and I always say that I'm a fan of her writing style, but I feel like I can't really say that when I've only read like her most popular things, and so I'm excited to read something else by her and hopefully really enjoy it because it's a dystopian. I find dystopians so interesting and I think that she does them so well, and this book, if you haven't heard of it, I don't know all that much about it because I didn't want to sort of spoil it for myself, but I do know that it is like a post-apocalyptic dystopian, which sounds really, really interesting. I think it's meant to be quite bizarre and weird, and everything that's going on is just very, very strange, which I think will make for a really, really interesting read, and hopefully I'll enjoy it as much as I enjoyed The Handmaid's Tale. So there we have it. Those are the 4 books that I'm going to be trying to read for the Gilmore Girls readathon, and I'm really, really excited to take part and chat with everyone else who's taking part in this readathon, as well as hopefully tick these 4 books off my TBR. Like I said, I know it's not the biggest readathon reading list, but I'm hoping that by keeping it small it won't be stressful and I'll actually be able to finish all of the books. So as I said earlier, I will link in the description below to Desi, Mackenzie and Liv with their channels and any information about the Gilmore Girls readathon, as well as the copy of the Rory Gilmore reading list that I use to find the books that I'm going to be reading in case you're interested. So let me know in the comments below if you're going to be taking part in this readathon and what you're going to be reading, because I would love to know. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.